Saw dudes, KHVOSTOV is back with the final shape, and while I know I'm a bit late to the party when making a video for this gun, I really wanted to take my time with the review. I actually got the gun a week ago at the time of writing, so I had plenty of time to enjoy what it has to offer. Long story short, it's good. Really good. Let's get started. This exotic auto rifle sits in the adaptive frame category and fires at 600 rounds per minute. Unlike other monsters in this class, it's not a stat monster as you can tell. It does get beat in some areas that legendaries can pass. However, it does have great aim assist, zoom, airborne effectiveness, and reload speed. The aim assistance stat sits at a massive 87 points, which is well over the competition. This alone makes the gun feel great to use for either input. For reference, I use a mouse and keyboard primarily, but I do own an Xbox controller for when my hands hurt. I did try out this weapon on a controller and found it surprisingly forgiving. The 17 zoom is nice, but doesn't physically push out the effective range of the gun. However, it does make it easier to track targets from longer distances, particularly in the Crucible. This small extra bit of zoom, literally 1 point over the competition, gives you a slightly larger margin of error when aiming. Factor this in with the aim assist, and you'll come to understand why the gun just sticks to enemies for you. Airborne effectiveness is a tricky one. You aren't really advised to fight while flailing in the air, but it's nice to be accurate while doing so. In my time using this weapon, I felt that the airborne effectiveness has helped me get the drop on enemies and land more of my shots. Of course, you aren't using a hand cannon, so peak shooting isn't the same. This makes this stat even more important since you are incentivized to maintain pressure until you kill the target. Reload speed is great as well, especially for a gun that does not come with a reload speed steroid. At base, the time between reloads is 1.55 seconds. The other guns in the infographic, the Summoner, Ross Arago 4, and Old Sterling have a reload time of 1.72 seconds. Not a massive difference, but a difference nonetheless. The juicy stuff is the recoil. KHVOSTOV sits at a great 97 points in its recoil stat, and while that number will piss me off to no end, the in-game performance is mouth-watering. Let's compare the recoil pattern of no hesitation, Old Sterling, and KHVOSTOV with no input, only holding down the fire button. As you're seeing, KHVOSTOV just doesn't kick all that much. Of course, there is still the slight left to right sway, but even that is minimal. This is amazing. You don't need to fight the weapon to fight others anymore, and can instead focus on just basic tracking. This means that there's probably some special recoil magic that Bungie put in this thing. I think the best comparison to this gun is Outbreak Perfected, which also has near non-existent recoil, despite having some wonky stats. KHVOSTOV also performs fairly well under fire, which is perfect for its weapon type. As already discussed, auto rifles cannot peek shoot in the same manner as hand cannons. They must continue to engage with the target until it is dead, at least in the Crucible. When getting shot at, the gun doesn't really bounce around all too much. Instead, it bites the bullet, pun intended, and stays relatively on target. In my time with it, I felt that I could remain confident in taking some riskier duels because I knew I could stay on target unlike the other legendary options. Okay, let's cover the exotic traits. The intrinsic, the right choice, states that every 7th bullet from this gun deals additional damage and ricochets to nearby targets. At first, I thought this would be ricochet rounds but slightly better, but I was dead wrong. The exotic trait is like firing cartoon bullets. In PvE, it makes clearing adds a breeze since you can fire at one enemy and still affect others around them. The 7th round gets a 253% damage bonus. It doesn't require kills, only for you to hold down the trigger, so unlike other options, you aren't required to prime or set up anything. Just play with the weapon and you're pretty much there. One of my favorite weapons, Outbreak Perfected, doesn't have a kill requirement either. It performs much like KHVOSTOV in the sense that you get all the benefits you want from simply firing the weapon. This is a thing of beauty and easily makes it endgame viable. It's important to note that every first bullet in the mag will be a ricochet round with extra damage. This is nice and won't change your gameplay much, but it means that it is capable in almost all situations. So for those who compulsively reload at every chance they get, this is a good gun for you. In PvP, the ricochet is nice, and I have gotten 2 or 3 multi-kills with it, but it's not the main attraction just yet. The ricochet round deals 31 precision damage to the main target, unlike the usual 27, and the bounce deals 19 damage. Also, the round in its base form only has a bounce distance of about 7 to 8 meters, so enemies practically have to hug each other. This isn't breaking any TTK barriers, but it can make the gun even easier to use. All 600 RPM auto rifles at base have a time to kill of 0.8 seconds. For tier 10 resilience, it will take 9 crits to kill, and for everything below that, it takes 8 crits in one body. However, with the extra precision damage, KHVOSTOV can 8 crit one body for a kill on all tiers of resilience, assuming the very first bullet in the mag is a precision hit. This makes the weapon more forgiving and has a leg up over the other options. And remember, it doesn't need a kill to make this happen. You just need to reload. Let's take a look at the trait that takes us to the next level, Eyes Up Guardian. It states that collecting orbs strengthens this weapon's next several ricochet shots, providing more damage and more bounces between targets. When you collect an orb, you'll get a buff called Eyes Up Guardian ×7, which is not locked to a timer. The buff causes the ricochet bullets to ricochet more and deal even more damage. The ricochet damage, while the buff is active, is multiplied by 2.4 times and ricochets 6 times. This makes ad clear even easier and makes targeting chunkier units first a good strategy. You're essentially turning a single target weapon into an effective AoE weapon. In PvP, this buff makes the gun go through Roid Rage. The Ricochet makes multi-kills super easy and turns you into an A-level threat. Ricochets target people up to 16 meters away, meaning that enemies don't need to be hugging to get that bullet sharing action going on. The effect only gets stronger the more people are nearby. Keep in mind that the extra damage, plus the Ricochet, can give you a TTK of 0.7 seconds if you get 8 precision shots and 2 Ricochet damage instances. Additionally, this gun comes with Shoot to Loot as one of its perks. I know that some people don't like this perk, but trust me, there is a reason why other people love it in high-end PvE. For example, it allows you to pick up ammo and orbs from a distance without having to endanger yourself. In difficult content, stepping out of cover can be a death sentence, so this perk alone brings a lot of utility to the table. With Shoot to Loot, you have a ton of opportunities to play into your subclass and mods. Shooting ammo bricks is great since it reloads all of your weapons, but when you shoot an orb, any number of things can happen. For one, you can kickstart your surge mods for a DPS phase or heal yourself with Recuperation, which is a personal favorite of mine. You can also give yourself subclass bonuses like Devour or Woven Mail, all without the hassle of having to walk. Another point is that it directly synergizes with Eyes Up Guardian. If you have a kinetic siphon mod on your helmet, you can kill 2 enemies, spawn an orb of power, and shoot it out of the air to get the buff. This cycle can stay on repeat as long as you have a means of orb generation. With a fire team, this effect is up much more often. Those on your team are constantly creating orbs, so you can lay on the trigger and keep releasing wave after wave of ricocheting rounds. Of course, if you are on a raid team, this means you don't need to worry much about constantly proccing the perk, it'll just be there. I think the beauty of the weapon comes from the fact that it doesn't need a build to work. All you need is at least one orb generation method and you are golden. Of course, you can squeeze out way more if you put in the effort, but that isn't required. In a sense, it's a plug and play weapon. You don't need another exotic piece to make it busted, but busting it out isn't that hard. That being said, KHVOSTOV creates so many orbs so easily that it's hilarious. Having a kinetic siphon mod on it makes it so easy to generate them because of the ricocheting rounds, and picking them up with Shoot to Loot makes the cycle even easier. Shoot to Loot ties everything together by giving you the option to remain safe while dispatching targets from an advantageous position. You also have to remember that the intrinsic perk rewards you with a higher damage round just for firing the weapon, without the need for kills or precision hits, just firing. You can't get much better than that. Now let's bring in some build crafting talk. KHVOSTOV has great potential when building super energy thanks to its orb generation and damage spread across enemies. And since it's a kinetic weapon, it does build both bars of transcendence. It does so at a decent pace given the ricocheting rounds. When comparing it to other exotic weapons, one keeps popping up in my head, Quicksilver Storm. Quicksilver with the Catalyst active is a strand weapon and fires at 720 rounds per minute, the same as the rapid fire archetype. This exotic fires mini tracer rockets on every 14 hits, and every rocket impact loads a grenade into the chamber for the alternate fire. Right off the bat, Quicksilver deals more upfront damage thanks to its rockets and grenade all fire. However, it doesn't have the same ease of use, utility, or ad clear potential as KHVOSTOV. Ultimately, the choice comes down to preference, so try them both out. Personally, having Shoot to Loot is too important for me to give up, so I will stick with the traditional boomstick. So the question is KHVOSTOV worth it? The quest itself is long and arduous, and it took me 9 hours in one day because overthrow was being annoying. In my opinion, it was worth it since I like using exotic primary weapons that are strong and unique, much like Outbreak Perfected. In lower difficulty content, this gun clears with no trouble. In mid to high tier content, KHVOSTOV is a workhorse. It creates orbs, chunks orange bars, and makes quick work of ad-dense areas. Endgame content may seem like a mixed bag, but utility and ricochet rounds will help it pull through. It will never let you down like Rick Astley and is amazing in any encounter. However, if you prefer to use a special weapon or heavy weapon that takes up your exotic slot, it may not be for you. This is especially true for PvE players since some special weapons are integral to certain DPS rotations. If you are the dedicated ad clear person on your team though, consider picking it up. For PvP players, I know you guys will scoff at the idea of stepping into PvE, but that's beside the point. Auto rifles aren't in the best place in the Crucible thanks to a hand cannon dominated meta. It is fun to use, eats flinch like I eat banana bread voraciously, and looks absolutely beautiful. It is the epitome of great feeling guns and should be in your arsenal if you like auto rifles. For me, it was love at the first trigger pull. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing. As always, thank you for watching and happy farming. Stay safe.